Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 286 of CryptoBiography, part 18 of The Smallest Magician. And here we go. And that's how Emby's legend truly started. She followed Lavera on the way out of town, ostensibly on a supply run for an inn north of town. On the way, they cut off the road when no one was there. Lavera showed Emby the dry hollow where she or Timmy would leave supplies for her, and then they continued on, with Timmy watching over the pull wagon, safely off the road. She led Emby onto an increasingly less clear track over some difficult terrain until finally the house was in front of them. It was small for a human, but more than big enough for Emby. It was a single room, but it did have a fireplace and even two small glass windows. Time had not been particularly kind to the house, but Emby could tell at once that she could fix the problems in front of her. Lavera said she would help with some nails and the loaning of a hammer, and Emby made the house her home. She learned magic very quickly, both from what Donegal had taught her directly and his book. Soon she had repaired the house, both through mundane and magical means. Her next lessons were used to make the area around her new home safe, both alerting her to any intrusions and much later trapping them. Her good nature kept her from ever making dangerous or violent traps, though eventually she learned how to do that as well. At first, she lived off of Lavera's good nature, but as soon as she could, she learned how to make minor enchantments. Soon she was able to enchant candles to last longer, or give off interesting colored smoke, or smell in several different scents. Lavera made a fortune, and Emby felt much better about the situation. Lavera even gave back a good amount of money and goods. Emby had everything she wanted. This included the remaining books at Donegal's, for Emby had made a camouflage visit and secured them. She watched over the years as Timmy grew to adulthood. She realized, sometime around when Timmy got married, that though she didn't have a strong need for his company, she was slowly becoming lonely. It was mostly long stretches of her being by herself, with occasional visits from Timmy, who she always went out to meet at the supply drop, or Lavera, who usually came to Emby's house. Emby was at Timmy's wedding, camouflaged, when she decided she needed to find some sort of life that she could live openly. Because of the occasional hunter or wanderer being trapped or frightened away by Emby's enchantments, there was a strong local legend that a ghost lived in her house. Even fewer people that went there than ever, and most people only had the vaguest idea of the direction her house might be from the city. The kobolds had not attacked for some years. She knew that she could never fit into kobold society. That left the human city she was raised in. That left living on her own terms. The trouble was, the church had only grown stronger in the years since she left town, and their viewpoints on kobolds had only gotten more violent and ugly. Emby took years to prepare her return to the city. This gave her time to learn even more magic and create many magical items. It also gave Lavera time to retire, as she had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Timmy took over the business and was doing well. His youthful friendliness had matured into a deep kindness that made him a lot of customers. Emby let him know enough of her plans so that he would not be caught in any crossfire. She wanted him well out of it. On the church's high holy day, there was a large group of people in the city square. The priest was about to give the liturgy when Emby walked out in front of him. She raised her arms and her voice as the crowd gave a gasp. "People, I am not your enemy. I was raised by the magician Donegal. I have only ever known this city until I left when he was killed by kobolds. Other kobolds, not me. I would like to return. Kobolds do not need to be your enemy." That was as much as she got out before she was rushed by the entire corps of priests. It took them a surprisingly short amount of time to make a stake, tie her to it, and put a whole lot of wood and tinder underneath. The head priest himself lit the fire. As the flames rose, Emby started screaming. Eventually, she choked as the smoke filled her lungs, and then fell silent as the flames devoured her body. "Wow, Sugar, you really screamed bloody murder," Lavera said. She and Emby were reclining on couches in Lavera's home. "I had to sell it," Emby said. "Otherwise they'd know it was a homunculus. Well, I proved my point. They're definitely out to kill me. Didn't allow me any trial or anything. True enough. You sure you're okay with the rest of my plan? Darling, those people have been a blight on this city." The next God's Day, Emby waited until the church was full, then sealed the doors magically and burned the church to the ground. Everyone who had helped Emby apparently burn to death burned in their turn. Soon after, she went around in public again. There were very few church people to try to abuse her this time. With the money she had saved up by making things for Lavera to sell, she soon bought Donegal's old home. Old Kana returned to the home, too old to work properly, but Emby let her stay for free, and Kana did what she could. Emby never had to do anything violent ever again. She hired out her services as a magician, sold magical items directly and through Timmy. Her reputation was, of course, that of a powerful and frightening magician. No one had proof she had set the church on fire, but rumors could not be squashed. There were several times over the years that Emby saved the city from external foes, and eventually all saw her as a great asset to the city, as powerful people almost always are in the end. And that's the end of the story. Obviously, it's a little bit short. This week has been kind of crazy. I don't want to go into it at the moment, but yes, this is sort of how I wanted to end Emby's story. It's a little abrupt, but I'm pretty happy with it overall. And I hope you enjoyed it. I have obviously got more writing to do for next week, and we'll continue on. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or now Mastodon. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2022, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.